Hi, my name is Jasmine, aka Black Girl Absolute. Today I'm going to be doing a recreation of my very first painting. So yeah, let's jump right in. So for those of you who've been watching my channel for a little bit or went back through some of my earlier videos, you may remember this video from a long time ago. It feels like a long time ago, but I think it was just last year. Time doesn't exist anymore. Anyway, you may remember this video in which I am, reviewing in a sense and reacting to seeing my first painting after about like 9 years or so. And in that video, I said this. So it could be cool to do a repaint of this to like see how much I improved in 10 years. And so as promised, whenever the time came around, I took out some time to actually recreate this painting for the first time. It would have been perfect if I didn't completely misremember the date. So as you may have noticed, my background looks very different. I just recently finished moving. During the moving process, I kept in mind that I needed to recreate this painting because in my head, I'd somehow remembered it as being August 11th. But in actuality, as it says in my original video, that was June 11th. So I am 2 months behind schedule for recreating this painting. But I mean, I've still been painting for 10 years, 10 years and 2 months. So, I think it's perfectly fine. As a quick recap about this first painting, which I actually have right here, let me go grab it. So this was my first ever painting. This was a painting that I did back in June of 2011. At the time, I was 17 years old. I was in high school in 11th grade. So this is a painting that I did of Hayley Williams from Paramore, who at the time, that was my absolute favorite band. Like, I was obsessed with Paramore. The idea that I had behind this piece at the time was I saw the way her hair was being like blown up by either some backwind, some crosswind going on behind stage, and it just reminded me of this like fiery inferno. It wasn't executed the way that I wanted to. Like, I remember being very frustrated at the time because I wanted it to look a specific way. So now on to the recreation. So I wanted to stay as true to this original painting as possible, but I also wanted to give myself the freedom to deviate. If there's details on this piece that really don't work for a recreation that I feel like I could do better with some different techniques, I decided to choose those over staying, 100% true to this original piece. The first thing that I wanted to do was just to make sure that I had the anatomy down the way that I wanted to make sure that I had like an idea of how I wanted the hair to move in the piece, making sure that I had her expression down. So on day 2, I was working on getting the background colored in. So you may notice on this original painting that there is a bit of a gradient going on where it goes from this like kind of like medium gray color all the way back into like a lamp black, which I'm sure at the time was a jet black. I don't know if that's faded a little bit. But for this painting, I wanted to deviate from that just a little bit. This is like the start of the deviations. In the original photograph, my reference photo, the stage lights were a little greenish, and it's something that I thought would be a really cool contrast against like all of the bright colors of like the reds, the orange, the yellows, and even the blue. Instead of like using gray here again, I decided to add in that vibrancy with just a little bit of green. Once I got the background colored in, I wanted to start focusing on getting the skin texture down. The next morning, I had a little bit of time to kill before work, and so I decided to use this time to really perfect the texture details on her arm and also get some details done on her face, which I've sped up here just so you can see the process. As you can see here, I added a little bit of green detail to the back of her shirt. So very similarly, as I mentioned before with the background, you know, there's also this like bit of the back of her shirt that's highlighted from these stage lights. And so in order to reflect that, I also added a bit of a green texture to the back of her shirt here. Later that night was probably the beginning of the scariest part of this recreation, and that was doing her hair. So this was actually the part of this painting that frustrated me the most because, you know, again, I was going for this like very blazing inferno sort of look, but I also still wanted it to look like hair, and I really didn't know how to paint either at the time. And so what I did in the recreation was that instead of starting with all of the other colors and then adding blue in at the end like I did with this original, I started with the blue first since it's gonna be the layer that's closest to the scalp, and then working out to be a more natural layered effect. So I started off with the primary cyan shade just to make sure that I was starting with this very vibrant blue base. And then worked in a little bit of titanium white in order to feather it out to make it a really soft texture in order to build the rest of the hair on. I went in with this really cool shade of Naples Yellow Red, which would really help to like feather out even more of that blue shade that was at the base of the hair texture, while also prepping it so it has like a nice buffer in between, you know, this really vibrant blue and these vibrant oranges and reds, so it doesn't create this catastrophe again where it just bleeds into like this really dark purple shade. So I got some cadmium red, this one coming from Liquitex, just to add in again those like really fiery red details. And then I really wanted her hair to almost glow. I found this like really cool painting or really cool drawing that someone had done, and I kind of wanted to reflect that like glowing almost to white sort of at the very tip of her hair, but to kind of try to disperse that throughout all of her hair strands. And so I went in with a very, very, very pale, I believe it's a cadmium yellow or canary yellow shade, and mix it in with a bunch of titanium white just to really boost up that very bright shade. After that, I went in and I finished working on the details for the shirt. So I had that green base that I mentioned earlier, and I mixed it in with a little bit of gray in order to kind of mute down the color of that green just a little bit, so it fit a little bit more in line with the color scheme of the painting. And so after that, this is the final result. Are the two paintings together? I think what I liked most about this process was really seeing how things that were like a struggle to near impossible for me whenever I first started my artistic process are way easier for me to do now, and are easier for me to do at a much better quality. You know, back in the day, I used to beat myself up a lot for not being able to do things as easy as it seemed, you know, people that I was comparing myself to, that they were able to do. I'm really grateful that my younger self, even with creating something that at the time I wasn't really proud of, that I still kept going and pushing through any of that disappointment and any of that frustration to still try to improve this thing that I cared about. This process was like super emotional, and also I was like kind of sick at the time that I was working on this painting, so there was just a lot coming up with the creation of this video. But it was a process that I enjoyed, and I hope you all enjoyed as well. So yeah, thank you again for making it to the end of this video. For any new visitors, hi, welcome. I invite you to look through any of my other videos, consider subscribing, but no pressure. The door is always open to new friends. If you are a new subscriber, welcome, thank you. You are my absolute favorite people. I hope you come back next week for my next video. But until then, I love you all. I hope you all are staying well in these scary times. As always, you are enough, and I hope you take care.